Antman and the Wasp: Quantumania has just dropped into theaters, so today I'm going to review it. If you haven't seen this movie yet, don't worry, as this review will contain no spoilers, and with that said, let's begin. And if there's one way to describe this film, it's that it's a much weirder version of Star Wars. The creatures in this film are weird, the quantum realm is weird, and your enjoyment of this film will depend on how much weirdness you can take. For me, I thought some parts of the film were not too weird, it was just the right amount of goofiness where it doesn't affect my enjoyment, and other parts of the film went way too weird. Sometimes it'll feel like a spin-off of Star Wars, and at other times it'll feel like a straight-up fever dream. I think the worst example of this is the character of MODOK. For the first hour of the film, I thought it was pretty good, and that was nice to explore this new campy world with weird creatures and nice world building. And then the film introduces MODOK, and I didn't know whether to laugh or to cringe when looking at him. It's like they took the actor's head and then put it on a dwarf's body. It was very unsettling to look at his teeth, his eyes. It was just really bad CGI in a movie that I thought otherwise had pretty good CGI. It just looked very bad in live action. And it's not just the way he looks, but also his personality. I watched the Adult Swim MODOK show a few months ago. It was actually pretty funny, and I recommend you give it a watch. It was from the same writers of Robot Chicken, so it was like a parody of MCU films and a parody of this character. And the MODOK in that cartoon is just as over the top as the MODOK in this film. Yes, the version of MODOK from a parody of this franchise, a parody of MODOK is just as goofy as the MODOK that is shown in this film. Like, there are two villains in this movie, King and MODOK, and while King is a very serious and brutal character who wants to kill trillions of people, MODOK is basically there to be made fun of and act very goofy, and the tone of this movie comes from weird and campy to deadpan serious whenever King shows up, which makes the tone of this movie kind of feel like a mess. With that said, I think King was a pretty good villain and Jonathan Majors played him very well. It just doesn't feel like he belongs in this campy and this goofy of a movie. One more complaint I have with this film is that the side characters from the first film, who are like Scott's friends, like Louise and the other guys, are not in this film. If you enjoyed those side characters from the first two films as much as I did, and thought they were the funniest parts of the first two movies, they're not in this film, and their absence, you can definitely feel it. Like, this movie is not as funny as the first two films. With that said, I still enjoyed most of this film. There were some jokes that made me laugh. Most of the CGI was pretty good in my eyes. I mean, I know some people don't like the CGI in Marvel films. I never really have a problem with it. I think I'm tone deaf when it comes to CGI in the movies because I normally don't notice it's bad CGI until someone points it out to me. But watching this in the movie theater, I thought the CGI was good enough. I thought some of it was actually pretty nice to watch, and King was a great villain. Paul Rudd does a good job playing the main character, so has two very good leads. That being said, the tone is kind of messy. Some of the CGI is bad, just some of it. The character of MODOK was too weird for me to enjoy and really took me out of the film. And the film as a whole is just a bit too goofy for me. After 1 hour into the film, it started to feel like they were going off the rails with the goofiness. Again, your enjoyment of this film will depend on how much weirdness you can take. So if you like goofy sci-fi films with a lot of world building, you may enjoy this film. If you don't like very goofy, very weird, very out there sci-fi films with a lot of weird creatures and it's like Star Wars but a little bit weirder, you probably won't like this film. I definitely had a hard time liking it because it was too weird. So for my final ranking, I would give it a 6 out of 10. It's definitely one of my least favorite MCU films. I still had a lot of fun with it, and my favorite scene is probably the scene you saw in the trailers, with there being multiple Ant-Mans that come out of nowhere, and you're starting to wonder who the real Ant-Man is. It was a very trippy scene. You were wondering what was happening, and I won't tell you why that happens because that would contain spoilers, but just know that that scene had some really good imagery that I actually really enjoyed, and there were some good jokes in there as well.